ain't taking notes from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Celtics Postgame Live. I am your host, Rob Haytan. I am with my co-host, Justin Lowe, and shortly, Seamus, a.k.a. Celtics Everyday, will be joining us live as well. The Boston Celtics go on to defeat the Atlanta Hawks and advance their win streak to 8. They defeated them 105-95. Celtics defense continues to show out. Jason Tatum led all game scorers with 38 points. He tagged along a nice little 10 rebounds into the mix, had 3 assists, a very efficient second half. Jaylen Brown trailed in with 17, gave us 9 rebounds. Robert Williams, another double-double, solid 10-point, 14-rebound outing from him. On the flip side, in Atlanta, Trae Young gave us 30 and 10, and Bogdanovich put up 26. The Boston Celtics will play the Philadelphia 76ers on the road on Tuesday. That game with huge implications. Season series tied 1-1 there. Celtics now the 6th seed, trailing the 5-seeded Philadelphia 76ers by 2 games. A chance to push that margin down to just 1 game as the All-Star break approaches. Justin, Celtics are hot. The hottest team in the NBA here. The Toronto Raptors lost their win streak last night against Denver, a team who Boston did beat. Celtics 9-1 in the last 10 and 15-4 since the new year.
Yeah, Celtics are also 10-1 since Marcus Smart returned back to the lineup from that injury. That plays a big factor. Seamus made a good point on Friday night when we played the Denver Nuggets. It's not that the Celtics played an awful game against the Denver Nuggets, but it was one of those games where we were trailing, it got tight down the stretch, and that wasn't a game the Celtics would pull out in that first half of the season, right? Where we saw, the Celtics would blow leads. If they fell behind, they'd actually dig themselves into bigger deficits. They weren't clutch down the stretch. Now, this is the second straight game where the Celtics saw some adversity, right? Where the Hawks led by, I want to say, was it 15 or 16? I want to say
the Hawks led by 15. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was big as 15. And as Seamus joins us, Seamus, I was just talking about, this is one of those games like the Denver game where maybe in the first half of the season, the Celtics might not pull this one out, where it got close. The Celtics were able to push it out to, was it 13 or 14 in that fourth quarter. Timeout was taken by the Hawks. The Hawks had cut it down to 6 with under 3 minutes to go, but the Celtics were able to keep their heads up and continue to score the basketball. I think it was a tale of 2 halves. The Celtics had an awful first half shooting. I actually thought they played pretty decent defense all game long, but a total tale of 2 halves. And hey, who knows? This might have been another game where the first half of the season, Celtics don't pull away, but they did it on national TV. Despite everything, ESPN was trying to take down the Boston Celtics. It was really Celtics versus ESPN and the Hawks. So I was very happy to see the Celtics walk away with this one.
Yeah, this was a great win for the Celtics, and especially following the win we saw on Friday night against the Denver Nuggets. Good here. My lag now. Hold up. Am I good?
You're a little shaky. You're good right now, though.
All right. Well, I'll keep going anyway. The Celtics, they pulled out this win today, and I never had a doubt in the fourth quarter about them actually pulling away with this game. And that's something that throughout the season, I have not felt all season long. Every time we get to the fourth quarter, it's, here we go with this Celtics team. Who knows? But today, they got down early, went down as much as 15 points early in the game against the Atlanta Hawks, chipped away a little bit in the second quarter, ultimately went down 10 at halftime. And then in the third quarter, they went down 12 to start the quarter, and I mentioned that on my live. And then after that point, they went on a 12-0 run to tie the game. And then from that point forward, they just dominated the second half, unlike they did with the first half. And down the stretch, there was really no doubt that they were going to pull this game out. And even during the stretches in which Atlanta inched back into the game, the Celtics always shut down their runs. And this win moving forward, this is a huge win because now we have Philadelphia on Tuesday night. If we can extend the win streak to 9 games, 9 wins on Tuesday against Philadelphia, and they will most likely have James Harden that date. Hopefully they do. And if we win that game, I mean, that's going to be huge for the team moving forward. This win today was huge for the team moving forward that, hey, we can actually beat good teams now. For the most of January and to the start of February, it's been the bad teams. We've been beating the bad teams over and over and over again. Yet now we're finally starting to see these prove-it wins, and it's about time.
Yeah, so just to kind of put into, understanding of how big Tuesday's game actually is. So the Boston Celtics currently 8 games in a row, hottest team in the NBA, right? We know that. They're the 6th seed. They play Philly on Tuesday. Following that Philly game, their remaining 4 games, obviously, I don't know what the Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving situation will be like. Well, actually, I know what the Kyrie Irving situation will be like. He will be out. I don't know what the KD situation will be like. But the following next 4 games, after that Philly game, if we can grit and grind one more win out of that Philly game, we have Detroit at home, a Brooklyn Nets team after the break. I doubt KD will be back by then. If he is, he'll kind of, I would assume, be maybe on minute restriction that night. But we got Brooklyn in the Barclays. No Kyrie. Ben Simmons probably up in the air. And then guess what, guys? Following that Brooklyn game, we got Detroit in Indiana. So there is a real possibility if the Celtics can lock in on Tuesday night against Philly, there is a real possibility you could be looking at a Boston Celtics 13-game winning streak here. And I don't want to get ahead of myself by any means, but I mean, the Celtics 8 in a row, if they can handle business against a team that they're 1-1 on the year, they won to start December and then lost, I want to say midway through, about 2 weeks later, on the road. Right, if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of a rough loss on the road. Boston kind of always struggles against Philly in Philly. It's kind of always a tough matchup. Hopefully, we'll have Daniel Tice back for that game. But Seamus, I mean, the door has officially been kicked wide open for the Boston Celtics. And if they can take care of business for the Philadelphia 76ers, there is a chance the Celtics, we're looking at a 3 seed. It's real because, I mean, the Celtics have handled business 2-0 at home against the tough teams here. I mean, there's a real shot the Celtics could extend this win streak. Call me crazy to right around 13 games.
I would not call you crazy because I was thinking the exact same thing during the game. I was thinking, we beat the Nuggets on Friday night. I've always seen the Nuggets. They're a good team for sure. Yeah. We beat a good Nuggets team on Friday, but still, they don't have all of their horses there. No Jamal Murray, no Michael Porter Jr. And you saw last night, too, they struggled to beat the Raptors last night and almost didn't pull out that win. And you look at that win and go, okay, well, we're going to play the Atlanta Hawks on Sunday, who are going to have everybody in the lineup. They're going to be, motivated to come out and win against us like they always are. And you've seen us earlier this season give up a plethora of points to the Atlanta Hawks and fall both games in Atlanta. So you knew that Atlanta was coming in. This was going to be a really, really tough matchup for the Celtics. And halfway through the fourth quarter, I was thinking, while we were up 10, I was thinking, well, if we're going to pull out this game, who's to say we're not going to pull out a game against Philadelphia on Tuesday night? And moving forward, if we face the bad teams like the Pistons, I believe you said we had the Pistons a couple more times here. Well, we have the Pistons 2 or 3 more times this season. Schedule in front of us, and you mentioned Brooklyn too. I don't think they're going to have all their pieces either. This is a legitimate. We could be in the midst of a really, really long winning streak here. Now, I don't want to define really, really long. Like I said, could be 13 games. And right now, it just feels like this team is on a roll, and they're for real right now. And the fact that we're now going to be facing lesser opponents, that we've kind of proven it against these last 2 opponents, I'm very optimistic about where this team is heading after today, especially after this afternoon, what we saw.
So, totally. And hear me out here. So, like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but as we kind of approach the All-Star break, you're gonna have to start looking ahead of what's to come. Like I said, Celtics have to come into Philly, have to handle business there. They got, in my opinion, what is the MVP of the league this year, either Joel Embiid or Ja Morant. I mean, you're going in to play Joel Embiid. Never easy. And guess what? After that little all-star break, 3 games in a row, you come back home for a 3-game homestand. So I'm not going to say we're going to clean house and go on a 20-game win streak. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying here is that the Celtics are I'm not making a prediction, right? I'm making a statement. And it's the Celtics are about to climb the standings. It is about, I think the Boston Celtics here are really making a push at a top 3 seed. And you can call me crazy, and I will accept it. But like I said, we got in the next 5 games, one real opponent. Everyone else is either a tanking team or, we have them at home. We got Atlanta, Memphis, and Brooklyn. A little 3-game homestand. That Brooklyn game, probably Sunday, March 6th. Expect that to be a tough one. Expect KD, Simmons, and Kyrie to all be active in that game. But, the Boston Celtics, I mean, are we saying officially that this team is legit? Like, are we saying that now? Like, because I was watching this game, Celtics up 10, 5 minutes left, and I still have that little feeling in my stomach, like, oh God, Atlanta puts it a 6, timeout Udoka, here we go again, or are we past that point?
I think we look at this, and again, I think the Celtics, I really trust their defense a lot. And I think a lot of, actually 6 of their 8 wins of this win streak, they've held opponents under 100 points. And they've even held teams into the 70s and 80s this season, which for today's NBA, that is absolutely nuts to hold the team under 90 points. But I kind of thought about that too, Rob. You brought up a really good point. That's a good point because, Celtics had a 14-point lead at one point, or a 13-point lead at one point, and then it got down to 6 in that fourth quarter with still 3 minutes left. And, before that, Rob Williams and 1, which was huge for the Celtics. I was kind of sitting there too and saying, this is when we're going to see how different of a team we are between before the deadline and after the deadline, even though we haven't seen the production of Daniel Tice so far. But I don't know. The Celtics have been able to pull out these last 2 games. It's rejuvenated. It really is. I think the problem with tonight's game was the Celtics could not hit a shot they couldn't, to save their life.
That's
they couldn't hit a shot in the first
theme,
half.
though. So,
right.
So,
right.
And this is a point I want to make too about, for all the positive that's happening for the Celtics. I do think there are some negatives we could point out. And one of those being is I do think we're a little bit thin on our bench now. Right. We traded 3 guys in Langford, Richardson, and Schroeder, who played, especially Richardson and Schroeder, and occasionally Nesmith, they played significant roles in games. And obviously Derek White, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, shot very poor from the floor, 4 of 14. However, still a solid game. But, Pritchard was Payton Pritchard, in my opinion, is these in the past 2 games, he's proven he's not really a rotational guy. I do think the Boston Celtics, there is a very good chance that, if they don't add a guy like Gary Harris from the buyout market or whatever it may be, there's a real chance the Celtics might find at times, one, you don't want your guys playing this heavy minutes every single night. I mean, Tatum played 40, Brown played 37. Like, that's a lot of minutes to wear and tear on your guys throughout the course of a season. I think it's time that I'm not saying Isaiah Thomas, whoever it may be, but I think that's a real thing you have to look at if I'm Brad Stevens, is how long can they sustain a 7-man, 8-man rotation?
Right. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see how they fill out these last 3 roster spots. Ime Udoka earlier addressed what we're addressing right now is the shooting, that they're going to be looking for guys to upgrade their shooting with those last 3 roster spots, and they're going to have a lot of room to operate in that regard with the buyout market. You mentioned Gary Harris, a guy like Eric Gordon could be available as well. And if you get one of those guys on your roster, you automatically upgrade your shooting tremendously, especially coming off the bench. And like you mentioned too, our bench unit is a little bit thin right now after all of these moves, and we don't really have guys to slot in once our starters are, we like to play a 7-8 man rotation, but once our starters, and plus Derek White now has been inserted in there heavily, once those guys, need a break or they're just not bringing it for a certain period of time, you'd like to go to the bench and find somebody off the bench that you can look to for a bucket or for a defensive stop. And the Celtics don't necessarily have that at the moment. And you would hope that Peyton Pritchard would turn into that spark plug off the bench. But like Rob said as well, he just hasn't been that this season. And I don't know whether that's because of the rotation spot he's filling now that he has less of a rhythm when he's going out there. He plays less minutes, whether that's factoring into the equation or the fact that he's just having a bad season from beyond the arc. And that could be a possibility too. But the Celtics definitely need to address their bench moving forward.
Yeah.
And that step with this team, because you have a really, really solid starting five and a nice little 6 and 7 man thing there going off the bench for them in their rotation. You have to fill out the rest of the rotation for shooting, essentially, is what the Celtics need. And I'm interested to see, because the buyout market is going to be full of those guys coming up here.
Yeah, and I think Tice will fit nicely. I think the best part about Tice is that he's going to allow Al to kind of drop down to that 20-minute per game category and really just preserve him for the playoffs. And I think that is really the value of Daniel Tice here, is he's going to almost do everything Al Horford does. Not as great as a passer, but he can knock down threes when you need him to. He's a phenomenal defender, can switch onto a guard if he needs to. In my opinion, he's a little bit faster on on-ball defense. I think it's a little bit of an improvement there over Al. So I think Tice fits very, very well in that aspect. Let's, you get Al's knees fresh for the playoff run it looks like we might be making. Maybe. I don't want to go too ahead of ourselves, but I completely agree. I would have loved to see Sam Hauser get in tonight. Personally, I would have loved to shift White down to the kind of that point guard role off the bench and play Hauser. I don't know why we don't. He is a shooter, especially in a game against a Hawks team that loves to shoot the basketball. You mean to tell me Sam Hauser can't go man on man against Danilo Gallinari on defense? He absolutely can. Absolutely can hold his own there. However, he is a new guy. He just got brought up. Maybe later in the season, we'll see that. But, I'm just saying that you give Isaiah Thomas 11 minutes in a basketball game, he's going to get you 10 points. And that's all I'm saying. And as much as I have a bias for Isaiah Thomas, that is a real thing the Celtics have to think about. I mean, IT is a significant upgrade offensively than Pritchard is.
And Seamus and I this is a shameless plug, but we have a whole YouTube video on talking about the Isaiah Thomas situation, why the Celtics should or should not give Isaiah Thomas at least a 10-day contract. The thing here's my question, guys, because the Celtics seem to be very, very, very focused on their defense, which, I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Do you go after guys? Yes, they can shoot, but they can also play defense, because you go after a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who's a bit undersized. He can't really play defense. That's where, you're really going to, you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my thing is I love this defensive identity. I do. I think we're the best defense in the league. I think we're right up there. However, I do think at some point you got to sit down and think, is it sustainable? I personally think it is, right? Defense wins championships is the saying. But at the same time, I think especially in a game against the Hawks where you have Trae Young, where you can kind of hide a guy like IT in a game against Atlanta. Defensively, in my opinion, I mean, we've done it. We did it for 3 years successfully with Isaiah Thomas on the court under Brad Stevens. So I think with a strong game plan, you 100% can kind of, sacrifice a little bit of defense for some offensive upgrades. But at the same time, I mean, how many times? I mean, you're not going to get 2 of 6 from downtown from Brown, 2 of 10 from White, 0 of 2 from Pritchard, 0 of 5 from Smart. I mean, you're not going to get that every night. So, I mean, I do think that, you figure Brown 17 points, kind of a rough shooting night. He's usually right around 25. So, personally, if I'm Brad Stevens, I'm signing Isaiah Thomas, and I'm not just saying that because if he was doing the same thing back with the Bucks, 3 years ago when he was available, I'd say the same thing. I think IT is a guy you don't have to play him every night. There could be a couple nights where he's not getting minutes, but I think in games like this where you're the first quarter, you have 13 points with 3 minutes left. You throw IT in, and he can get you a couple buckets, knock down a couple threes, take it, get an and one, get the intensity on offense a little bit higher. Because I think that's the next step the Celtics have to work on to become a complete basketball team.
I don't know. I just look at some of the other buyout candidates that are already out there, or I shouldn't say already out there, but
I'd like Gary Harris
expected to be out there. And a lot of them I would fit better than Isaiah Thomas. I still am in a little bit of an agreement that we can give Isaiah a 10-day contract. We have 3 roster spots left. Say we fill 2 of them. There's 1 left. We just keep open for the rest of the season and switch out 10-day guys. Isaiah Thomas could be one of those players, but to fix this actual problem for the Celtics, which is their shooting, I'm looking at guys like Thomas Satoransky, like I mentioned, Eric Gordon, Gary Harris. Is Kent Bazemore going to be available out there? There are a lot of good buyout candidates this season coming from teams, possibly. And if that is the case moving forward into March, I would think that the Celtics would be a little bit hesitant to go out there and get Isaiah Thomas right away, sign him right away to a 10-day deal. I think later on down the line, say we get into late March, early April, maybe that's a possibility at the end of the season there. But I don't think Isaiah Thomas is necessarily the answer for some of the Celtics shooting problems right now.
No, yeah, I agree. And, like I said, if the Magic part ways with Gary Harris, I think that should be our absolute guy to go for. I think Harris shoots the ball well, play makes really well. I don't know how he is defensively. I'd assume he was with those Denver teams, and Denver's usually a very strong, I think, defensive team under Mike Malone. So I'd love Gary Harris, but I do agree. I think the Celtics defense is just so significantly better. I mean, the Hawks, I want to say the Hawks are a top 5 scoring offense in the league.
They're pretty good.
I mean, and we held them to 95. Like, that's wild. I mean, I get it. No John Collins for Atlanta. But, I mean, that's impressive. I mean, this Celtics, I think this Philly game's another big test. But, I mean, God, you got Embiid coming up. I mean, if Harden plays, I mean, Philly's going to be good. They got Harden in the I like our matchups, though. You got Smart on Harden. You got probably Horford or Rob Will on Tobias and Embiid.
Yeah.
You have Danny. I mean, Danny Green's irrelevant.
Now,
Tyrese Maxey.
Now, Philly lost a lot of depth with this trade as well. Seth Curry, Andre Drummond went in that deal, I believe, as well. So that's something you're also going to have to take into accountability, and it's going to have to be a game where the starters play well. Obviously, the starters came out flat today. Granted, it was a 2 p.m. start.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to rely on the bench as well in that Philly game. That bench is going to have to outplay Philly's bench. There's no excuse as to why that can't happen. Grant Williams hit some big shots tonight. I thought he was huge defensively in that Denver game. Derek White had another solid game, and if he wasn't scoring, he was doing something else, whether it was passing, rebounding. I think he had 2 steals and a block as well. Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith, although Nesmith hasn't seen time in the last 2 games, those are 2 guys that need to absolutely get going. You mentioned throwing Sam Hauser for a couple minutes, whether it's 2 minutes a game, get him some reps, especially. I thought Celtics could have used Sam Hauser in that first half when the Celtics were really struggling. Would they use him for like 15 minutes like they use in increments of Derek White? No. Throw him in there for a couple minutes. If it doesn't work out, either take a timeout or just substitute him out. But you're going to have to take that into accountability as well. Depth. The Celtics need to be deeper than the Philadelphia 76ers come Tuesday night.
Yeah, and something I've noticed, I think a common trend for these Celtics games is they're going to be in the game. I mean, they're going to always be within striking distance, and I want to say that's because of their defense. Obviously, tonight, Atlanta pushed lead up to 15, but the Celtics in the second half, they buckled down and just got stops. And when you're doing that, no matter how poorly you're shooting offensively, you're going to have a shot at it just due to the fact that, the other team can't score. And when you got a guy like Jason Tatum, when Jaylen Brown, who are one of the two, usually go out there and can give you a 40-point performance like we saw from Tatum today, 38, you're going to be sitting in a good position. Obviously, it's not the way
Correct.
you want to win consistently. However, you know, it's you got to say probably once every 10 games you're going to get one of these games where shots aren't falling and the bench can't really produce anything, and but guess what, one thing that will always stay consistent no matter what, no matter where you're playing, what the weather is, what the gym temperature is, you're always going to be able to play consistent defense. And I
Right.
think the Celtics have proven that, listen, we're going to buckle down on the defensive end. We're going to get steals. We're going to play a fast-paced brand of basketball, and the shots will come, right? Because get the looks, they'll fall eventually enough to get the win. And I think until they get a guy that can shoot consistently for them, that's going to be their identity. And if they get a guy that can shoot, you got to figure out, okay, how can we get this guy the ball now? Because I think that's a problem you could run into as well.
Yeah, and today's game too, you just look at the entirety of today's game and you really notice that the Celtics on the defensive end of the floor, if they're going on the defensive end of the floor, if they're up to their peak defensively, they are hitting offensively. Typically, you saw in that second half, they gained way more of a rhythm when they picked up the pace. And moving forward, you'd like to see them, like I mentioned with the buyout market, you'd like to see them add a guy that can match that pace as well and not, slow down the pace of the game and the offense. And in the first half, you saw in the game, the Celtics, they came out lethargic. And that's pretty typical for, like Justin said, a 2 p.m. start, because we've seen the Celtics team so many times just come out completely flat in early games. And that's exactly what happened today. They only scored 17 points in the first quarter, but once they started to push the pace in the second half, get stops, and run the floor, that was when it all turned around. And enough cannot be said too about the Celtics defense today, because in the first half it was not a good go. I believe the Hawks had 65 points or 55 points
55.
at half, but they were hitting on all cylinders in the first half, particularly from beyond the arc. In the second half, the Celtics just locked down, created turnovers, got out and ran, and really just made it easier on themselves on the offensive end of the floor while getting after it defensively. And that is certainly something that you want to see from the Celtics team moving forward, because there have been so many times this season that, we've kind of overcome our early quarter struggles. We overcome those problems. We, play consistently in the middle of games, and then at the end of the game, we just kind of fall flat. You want to see them progressively go throughout a game and take it over. And that's exactly what they did today. And I think moving forward, if they can continue this style of game, obviously not falling down, 10 points in the first half, they can avoid doing that. But if they can play this style of progressively ramp it up throughout an afternoon and just club a team to death as the game goes on, that's going to be a winning formula for them moving forward.
Right.
Yeah, no question.
I think a problem, guys, that I've been seeing is, it's not like the biggest problem in the world, but I'm sure you guys have noticed it. The Celtics, who are statistically one of the best free throw shooting teams in the league this season, have been really struggling from the free throw line the past few games. And in close games, like it's been in, especially when you're trying to claw your way back into it, like we had to do in that first half and in that third quarter, Celtics absolutely need to hit free throws. I know it's a lot easier said than done. I mean, you're running on adrenaline. You're very tired. You're panting. But at the same time, Celtics have shot over 90%, I believe the number was in the season. I don't know the number exactly.
82.
I heard
82%.
Oh, was it 82%? I don't know.
It's all teams, 82 leads all teams.
But still, 82% is a very high clip. I don't know what it is. Jaylen Brown has struggled from the free throw line tremendously over this win streak, especially over the last two games. I don't know how much you take of that. I mean, their defense makes up for it, because then they get the rebound and then they play defense and they get a stop. But the free throw shooting is definitely stuck out to me, and you gotta hit your free throws, especially in close games.
Yeah, I mean, Especially, you got a game against Philly coming up where they're going to get a lot of attempts at the line, especially with Harden now. You got Embiid and Harden on the same team. That's a lot of free throws they're going to get.
Oof.
So you got to step up to, I know, right? It's going to be a painful game to
Oof.
watch. You got to
Especially
step
if
up to the
Tice
line.
plays. Especially
you
if
gotta-
Tice plays.
Oh,
Tice,
man.
Tice is already in foul trouble.
You really got to be able to step up to the line and knock down, your free throws. And
Right.
I'm just excited here because listen, Celtics are 8 in a row, and it's been a year full of just disappointment and be feeling like there's no way out of the rabbit hole of this constant loop of you win one and drop three, losing to games like losing to the
Right.
Spurs and the Blazers and the Knicks
And the Pistons like
in the
3 times last
Pistons.
year.
Yeah, like it really is a sense of fresh air, a breath of fresh air, especially to seeing how we've played. And we said after that Brooklyn game in the post game show, like, all right, this is great. Now go do it against some good teams. The Celtics came out. They beat the Hawks by 10. They beat the Nuggets by 6. Two teams where you say a month and a half ago, I think we lose both of them. I think those are two games that you go in and you compete at one of them, and then you may be up on the other one, and you have a massive fourth quarter collapse. So you really are seeing, excuse me, the progress and the growth from this team. And credit to Udoka. Justin sent me a text the other day. Like, I don't think Udoka's getting enough recognition of his growth. I mean, this is a guy, first year guy, kind of got thrown into a situation of like, please help us. We had a really bad last year. He didn't really have a scheme yet. Team didn't really have an identity. They kind of knew what they wanted, but they didn't really know how to do it. Two young stars. All odds really stacked against this team. I don't want to sound cliche. You were sat the 12th seed entering January in the new year. There was really felt like, oh, damn it, here we go, right? This is going to be a lottery season. But the Celtics, since their December 31st matchup against the Phoenix Suns, they buckled up, they locked in, they had a couple slip ups. They blew a lead to New York on the road, and that game against Portland at home, they really should have won that, but they let that kind of slip away from them. 2 games, it's a big improvement for 2 months for the Celtics. Right. But just, I mean, I really got to give props to this team. They buckled in, they locked in, and they really are playing a style of basketball that, if you ask me, we haven't seen in at least two years. And I want to say all the ways, this is the best basketball we've played since, I want to say, the year Hayward went down with the injury, where we went on that massive win streak, that 16-game streak. I mean, that's how good we're playing. And the Celtics cannot get satisfied. They should just have this focus and just aggression towards everyone of just, I want to go out and I want to kick your ass.
And you know what? I think they do, Rob, because in the beginning of the season and last season, games like that Detroit game, games like that Orlando game, and even the Brooklyn game where Brooklyn was banged up, Celtics typically took their opponent, for granted. Okay, these guys don't have this player, or this team is a lower seed than us. Let's go in there, play, and then let our foot off the gas pedal. No, the Celtics during this win streak have gone up against teams where they should indeed win. And not only did they win, they throttled them. That Detroit game where I know they only won by 10, but we all know the story, the last 5 minutes when the bench got put in. That Orlando game, that Brooklyn game, Celtics should have absolutely dominated, and they did. And that, I think, is a huge, huge, huge step. And like Seamus says, building block. Yes, you did beat teams that are probably headed for the lottery, but at the same time, you beat them in a fashion you were supposed to beat them in, where we didn't see that in the last year and a half.
Now, listen to this. I got a question for you guys. If I were to tell you a month and a half ago, December 30th, and I said the Celtics are closer to the 1 seed than they are to being out of the play-in game, you'd call me crazy. The Celtics are 4.5 games out of first place in 6 games out of the play-in. They are 6 games ahead of the Atlanta Hawks. And that, I remember, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I remember texting you guys being like, it just takes one streak for this team and they will put themselves in a prime position. and they went out and did it. Like, God damn it. Good. Like, I don't, I hate to swear on live because we try to keep this thing as professional as we can, but fucking finally, like, holy shit. Like, they did it. They finally went out and they're playing. Like, I look forward to Celtics games again. Like,
that's what I'm saying, dude.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. I posted. We talked about that on the game.
Yeah.
How many times did we get we literally, I'm not going to lie to you guys. We had a meeting at the beginning of the year and we said we're not going to do pregame shows because we're saying the same things every pregame show. Every pregame show. Not saying we're probably going to bring them back, but I'm just saying we tried to produce content for you guys.
We're not. Ever since we stopped the pregame shows, we've been on we're not bringing pregame shows back.
I said it against Denver. I'm going to say it again because, Rob, you weren't here. Ever since, and I'm sure you can attest to this, ever since, like, last season, like, all of our content that we've been trying to make has just been the same content, just on a different night when the Celtics were playing a different opponent. This time, like, I was so excited after that Denver game when we saw Derek White play, and I stayed up till 2 a.m. I was just so ready. I couldn't stop editing things. I couldn't stop watching highlights and interviews because I've never been genuinely so excited in my life. In the past 2 years of my life. And then same thing with this Hawks game. I know the Celtics came out flat, which we kind of did expect. It's a 2:00 game. We expected that, but I haven't been so excited in a while. And like you said, Rob, this Sixers game, if we go out here and not only if we compete, but if we go out here and win on the road on national TV against the Philadelphia 76ers and extend this win streak to 9. Yeah. We have a lot more to be happy about than this win streak.
Yeah.
We have a lot more to be happy about.
I said this earlier in the pregame or postgame. See, now you got my mind on pregame. On the postgame show, if the Celtics come in and they beat the Philadelphia 76ers in any fashion, I'm talking by 2, by 1, by 20, by 10, whatever it is, and I'm the Eastern Conference, I'm sitting back and saying, "Oh, like shit, these guys are coming," because matchup wise, we match up well. I honestly think personally the team we match up the worst against is this Philly team, and B just is such a tough matchup, and now you add Harden on top of that. That's hard. That's not easy. But I mean, 1 through 7 now. I mean, they play defense 1 through 8. 1 through 8, they play defense. You got 2 elite scorers. You have 2 guys that have been in the moment. Guess what? Tatum, more Eastern Conference Finals appearances than Embiid, right? More than the Bulls. Yeah, they got more than the Cleveland Cavaliers. Guess what? We're more experienced. Udoka, he's got a ring. So if we can figure this thing out offensively a little bit, we can lock up Joel Embiid. I like my odds against the Pistons, the Nets, and the Pistons and Pacers again. I don't want to get cocky or ahead of myself, but
who do we have? I
like it.
Before the
Pistons. We got Pistons to close off.
The Pistons and the Sixers before All-Star break. And then we come out and face the Nets. The Nets could be good to go by that game. I don't think Durant's going for that game at all because he's on the other. He said on that All-Star draft show the other day that they asked him, "Do you have a timetable for your return?" He just goes, "Nope." No. Yeah. Just straight up no. Yeah. No timetable. That's a little bit concerning for Nets fans, I would say. So I don't think Kevin Durant is going to come back for that game. But, Rob, when you mentioned that we're closer to the 1 seed than the 11 seed essentially right now, or 10 seed, that gave me chills. Because I remember saying earlier this month or in December, one of the two, that I just couldn't picture this team going on a run. Like we see this we saw this earlier in the season where you mentioned they would win 1, then they would lose 2, or they'd win 2 and they'd lose 3. And they would just be in that same pattern of they cannot get this done consistently. And yet now we're sitting at the end of an 8-game winning streak and hopefully in the midst of a much bigger winning streak. And the fact that they've been able to put 8 straight wins together, no matter who the opponent is very impressive to see compared to where they were at the beginning of the season and even midway through the season where they just could not get it done consistently at all. And Justin mentioned too how we're actually excited for this team now. It's actually exhilarating to watch these games and prepare content for these games now, knowing that they actually have a chance. Throughout December, throughout early January, we were coming into these games going, and even late November, we were coming into these games going,
don't embarrass ourselves.
Celtics play tonight. Okay. Dang. And we're like, oh, the Celtics play tonight. This is it. And so the vibe around this team has completely changed entirely. And it's not only good for the situation moving forward with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, looking at the broad term view of this, because, we've heard, is Jaylen Brown going to want out? Jason Tatum, is he going to want out if this team is just middling his whole time here? Well, now they're starting to build an identity, build a culture here. And moving into the summer, too, you have all these guys after this trade deadline, you have all these guys on long-term money now. That this situation all of a sudden looks a lot better right now than it did just a couple of weeks ago, and it's astonishing to see how quickly it has turned around. I'm super impressed with the Boston Celtics right now, and honestly, it doesn't take too much to impress me, though, if you're the Celtics, because I love you guys. I love you guys.
So before I'm going to pass it over to you, Justin, but before we close out and we do final remarks and whatnot, I just want to say one thing too. You mean to tell me that this Celtics team, right? You give this team a whole week to prepare game plan defensively for one team in a playoff series, right? I remember I used to think, God, can this team really buckle down and win 4 out of 8 or 7 games? Can they really do that? But the way we've been playing defensively, I'm thinking teams should be this defense is legit. Like, if I'm a team right now, I do not want to match up against the Celtics because defensively they're just going to be in your face all series long.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see where this team actually goes now, because you just look at it a month ago and you just look at all the teams in front of us and go, who are they going to be able to beat in the first round? Who are they going to be able to make it past in the first round? They're not going to be able to score enough points 4 out of 7 games to make it past the first round. Yet now you add in Derek White. He makes way more sense for the offense. You add in Daniel Tice. He solidifies the exterior of the team there. And like we mentioned too, you still need shooting moving forward, but the rotations now make a lot more sense than they did with Josh Richardson in there and with Schroeder. Josh Richardson, I shouldn't give any hate to. He was good with the rotation, but Dennis Schroeder in there, it was always tough to see where his fit actually was out on the floor. Now you have rotations that make sense. You have a defensive juggernaut of a team with Tice and Derek White coming in and replacing Schroeder and Richardson. And now there's an argument that, yes, we may be struggling to gain points at some points in games, but we have a defensive juggernaut team that can hold teams down like you saw tonight or today. 95 points against one of the top 5 offenses in the league, and we've been holding teams under 100 consistently throughout the season. We've been elite defensively throughout the season, and now the fact that we have this solidified rotation and this identity with us, I'm really interested to see whether or not we can actually go out there and make some noise in the playoffs. Maybe we do win a first-round series. I should say this. There's going to be no gimmies in the East. Every series is going to be an absolute bloodbath from here on out. So I'm interested to see can we win a first-round series? Can we win a semifinal series? Can we make some noise? How good is this team going to be moving forward? There are some obvious flaws, like we mentioned with shooting, but overall, this team has an identity that they can lean on and actually win games with moving forward, and that is the defensive end of the floor. And it's going to be a fun next, 30-plus games, somewhere around the 30-game mark after the All-Star break. It's going to be really fun to see where this team actually ascends to, because I believe now the ceiling is all of a sudden way higher than it was coming into this month, and who knows how high it could even ascend to.
For sure. Like Robert Williams said, he just got tired of losing. They just got sick of it, and it's definitely paid off. Like I said, the Boston Celtics do defeat the Atlanta Hawks and extend their winning streak to 8 games. They beat them 105-95. JT led the way with 38 points. Guys, we're going to close out the show. Before we do so, final remarks, final words as the C's look to take on the Sixers Tuesday night.
Boys, want to hear something real quick? Something to make you smile, something to get you hype about Tuesday? The Boston Celtics not only have a chance to nearly overtake the 5 seed, but they have a chance to spoil James Harden in his debut in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform on Philly's home court and on national television. The Celtics have a legitimate shot to, if they already haven't proved themselves, to prove themselves. In I don't know what's the gap between 5 and 6. Before today's game, it was 2 games.
It's 2
but
games.
that was before today's game.
It was 2.5 entering today.
Was it?
It's 2 games, yeah.
Hey,
so we can push it to 1. Yeah, there's a shot.
There's a legitimate shot.
Yeah, the Celtics, they're gonna get a real shot at this, and it's gonna be exciting.
My final thoughts here, and also with that Justin point here, I should mention this too with his point. The Miami Heat with LeBron's big 3. Remember all the way back to 2010, we spoiled their first meeting with all those guys. We have another chance to do this here, although be it on the road. That's even better. But final thought for me, though, I have a question for you guys because it's Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm putting you guys on the spot here. Who is winning the Super Bowl tonight? Who is winning Super Bowl 56?
Who's winning, or who do you want to win?
Who is winning?
I got too much money on Cincinnati to not say Cincinnati right now, so I'm going with Shiesty and the crew.
Hey. I'm going with the Bengals.
Ian,
got Ian here. We're making Super Bowl picks, Ian.
Before we close out here, Ian, who you got? Super Bowl 56.
Super Bowl 56. I got Bengals.
Yeah, that's the Shiesty.
Joe
Shiesty, baby.
Gotta go with the Bengals. Although Aaron Donald could potentially,
potentially
murder Joe Burrow, depending on what happens. But I can't with Joe Burrow. I can't not roll with him.
So who are you going for, Seamus? All 3 of us are going Cincinnati. Who are you going for?
Ooh, it's a little cold in here, man. I'm going with Joe Burrow.
He set that
Let's go.
All right. Well, we will see you guys.
Crocky.
We will have you covered post game back at the end of the Sixers game on Tuesday night. I'm Rob. That's Justin. Below me is Seamus. And in the car coming home from the TD Garden is Ian. And we will see you guys next time. Have a